Hi there, how's it going? My name is Bonnie Violet, and I am a queer chaplain. And in case you don't know where you are, you found yourself at Dragon Spirituality with Flamy Grant. You are either watching us live via YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook, so we're glad that you could join us. Yes, Wendy Rogers, you are the first on here. Thanks for saying hello. Glad that you could join us. So folks who have never been to a dragon spirituality conversation before, this is an opportunity for drag and spirituality to come together. Much like a drag show, this evening, I had to move to a new location. So I'm actually in a coffee shop, so you might hear a little noise. So I do apologize for that, but I guess it'll just make us feel like we're at the club at a drag show or something. Also, you know, it's common to tip drag artists throughout the night as well. So I did put Flamy's Patreon. That's patreon.org at Heathen podcast, which is just in the bottom of the screen here. If you would like to support Flamy, that would be really great for you to do that there. What else I would say? I know, right? All right, so I can't think of anything else at the moment to say. I always like to just dive right in. So thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm really excited to have our guest. Our guest this evening is my 24th drag artist to get to interview. And I saw her on TikTok, much like I'm pretty sure many of you have as well. And I was just blown away by what was expressed in just like 60 seconds. And so I'm going to go ahead and introduce Flamy Grant here in a second. And here is that TikTok video for those who maybe had not got a chance to see it.
Bible Belt baby. I'm talking evangelical, be at church anytime the doors are open, Christian school, Christian music. Even our movies came with all the provocative bits edited out by some intern in Dr. James Dobson's office. We had the portrait of white Jesus on the wall next to the Thomas Kincaid and the cross-stitch quote from the book of Joshua that said, "As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord." And serve him I did. I did everything I was supposed to do, and more importantly, I avoided everything I wasn't. And darling, I was miserable. You see, it was cute the first time I stepped out in my mom's heels as a kid. They laughed, I hammed it up, they made me pose for a photo. But the second that behavior started to become a pattern, you better believe I got told exactly how a boy should act. I spent 35 years avoiding the impulse to paint my face, but nobody can tell me it wasn't worth the wait. Baby, it might take you half a lifetime or more, but when you finally realize that the deepest truth of the divine is that you are meant to be happy in the here and now, well, I can't wait to see what you make of your second act.
Hi, Flamy.
Hi, Bonnie. How are you?
I'm good. So glad that you could join me this evening.
I'm delighted to be here. I'm honored to be here. 24th guest. You've been doing this. This is amazing.
Yes, number 24. I was so happy when you actually returned the direct message and was like, yeah, I would love to do it.
Of course, yeah.
So I do like to, I like to just kind of get right into things. I'm not really good at foreplay. So I'd love to hear a little bit about little Flamy, like life before Flamy as a little one, and kind of tell us a little bit about yourself as a child.
Absolutely. Well, it's been interesting. The more I've been doing drag, and I've only been doing it for a little over a year, maybe almost a year and a half now. But the more memories of me as a child have come flooding back, where I remember myself poking around in my mom's makeup cabinet, or trying on her high heels or a big skirt. I remember she had this one green skirt that was just ruffled, and I would pull it up to under my armpits, and it would still drag on the floor, and I would just twirl and twirl and twirl. And so I started out a very, I think, flamboyant little kid. And then as as would happen in a lot of Southern evangelical fundamentalist homes, like the one I grew up in. I think once my parents and my community saw that some of these things were legitimate, they really got shut down. And we started getting a lot of definitions of what it was to be what a Christian looked like. And none of that involved
anything that you for you today. So I real quickly kind of learned that pursuing these things that make me so happy. And
Hmm.
um, so I didn't for about 30 years. I didn't. I just kind of turned off all of those interests and inclinations and instincts, and said, "All right, I will do what I have to do to fit in." I very much wanted to be a good boy, a good kid, and um, I was very good at being a good kid. I was good at rule following. I was good at least presenting to everyone that I was a just model student, model son, um, model churchgoer, all the things. And I just kind of was the golden boy of my
Hmm.
little community. And yeah, I always sang. I always had a little bit of a theatrical bent. I did theater in middle school, high school, college kind of thing. But other than that, I really tried to downplay all of the anything that would have been deemed effeminate, or just not appropriate for a
Hmm.
good old boy growing up in Western North Carolina, where I grew up.
Right.
So, yeah.
And did you in private, did you still kind of explore some of that stuff, or was it just completely just gone for a while?
It was gone. It was just very, very gone. And I turned my energy to other things, I think. Um, Music was
Hmm.
always my one big outlet that I could just fall back into. And that's where it was okay to have a little bit of passion and a little bit of, especially in church, you could sing a song about the Lord and have a little, you know, something behind it that just in everyday normal life would have probably been frowned upon. But no, I kind of let it all go by the wayside and tried to. I'm a really good compartmentalizer. I can really like cram a lot of shit into a bottle and tuck that away. I'm good at tucking a
Hmm.
lot of things, but I can tuck
Right.
that bottle away. And and not have to look at it for a long time until some sort of personal crisis, emotional crisis happens, and then I'm like, where are all these bottles coming from? And time to
Right.
uncork and figure it all out. But yeah.
Yeah. So you had a great experience with the church growing up?
Um, yes and no. So great in that it was our entire world. So I went to a uh the type of church I grew up in is called Plymouth Brethren. It's a sect. It's very small. My sister calls it a cult. I'm almost there. I'm almost to the point where I'm like, you know, hindsight is 2020. I'm like, we were kind of in a cult. It There's no leadership in the church that I grew up in other than a board of elders. So there's no staff, no one gets paid, no pastor. It's just people coming together, uh, 5 days a week for various purposes. You have Wednesday night prayer meeting and Saturday morning men's prayer breakfast and Tuesday night Awana clubs and Friday night missions, and of course, 3 services on Sunday. And but you just come together and you do life together, and there's no like I said, no leadership and no pastor or anything like that. So it's really just kind of community driven, community led, which could have been and I think was probably an asset of the community.
Yeah.
Except for it was just incredibly patriarchal, incredibly misogynistic and
Mm.
homophobic, and just all the things that we know fundamentalism can tend to be.
Yeah.
And so on the one hand, I grew up feeling like I was part of something and deeply connected and had a place in a community that I liked. There were a lot of kids my age growing up with me, and there wasn't a lot to dislike. We were rewarded for all of the indoctrination. So like we got,
Right.
I was laughing when you were talking about, drag show getting tips. Like we got tipped in church for learning the books of the Bible or getting up to recite them in front of the church. You could earn your quarters and your $5 bills that way. So I wasn't miserable in that way, but at the same time, I was very fearful of doing anything that would cost me my place in that community.
Yeah.
And the just the rules and regulations were a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Just everything from the creed we had to believe, the doctrines we had to sign on to the way we had to live and behave in the world. And I mean, this is nothing new to anyone who's grown up in any kind of, any religion really, but especially fundamentalist religions. But ours, I feel like, was maybe a step beyond, and it was especially hard for women. Women could not speak; they weren't permitted to use their voices during actual designated church services. So during fellowship and in between and that kind of thing, of course, they could socialize and interact, but they were never permitted to speak in a church service. They had to cover their hair, like a verse in Corinthians, like one little throwaway comment about a woman's hair is her glory and should be covered in the presence of the Lord, kind of thing. So they would wear these little crocheted doilies that the ladies of the church would make, and so it was especially tough, I think, for women and female identifying people growing up in that world. And it was tough for anyone who was queer, which I did finally realize about myself. And
Right.
that was my greatest internal struggle and fear, and was that was gonna ultimately cost me my place in my community.
Yeah, it can be so difficult because those communities can feel so loving, and like when you're a part of it, when you're able to do everything right or whatever, it's like such a great place to land. But yeah, as soon as you do something different, when did you start to, I guess, when did that difference, if you will, start to percolate a little bit more within you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like my queerness, right? Is that
yeah, like when did you kind of start to realize that?
Oh, it was probably Mr. Sugg, our PE teacher in elementary school. No, I did recognize from a super young age that, that I was queer in the classic sense of the word. That there was something that set me apart from particularly the other boys. I was never interested in the things that most of the boys wanted to do. I remember Car and Driver magazine was just a huge thing in elementary school and middle school, and I don't know why that was such a huge thing at my school. I went to a Christian school that our library had Car and Driver magazines everywhere, and that was what on lunchtimes. Anyway, the boys would get all the Car and Driver magazines and talk about cars, and I would just be like, isn't there anyone here who wants to talk about literally anything else? Amy Grant. Can we talk about Amy Grant's newest album? Like,
right.
So I think.
Did you find yourself hanging with the girls then a little bit more, or?
Yes, for sure. My best friend from age 5 or 3, even, I think, was when she came to our church. But like from age 3 until we went to the same college together, so a couple years into college, was a girl, and we, yes, I found like total refuge in that friendship, and it was great because she played piano and I started writing song lyrics, so we became a little, we had our little music thing happening, and so we got to do that a lot in church, perform our own songs, and we were constantly at each other's homes, and yeah, it was great. It was great to have a friend that I didn't have to put on a whole lot of airs with. I mean, I never came out to her of what was going on in me, but for sure, for years, I had a close friend there, and that was great.
Nice. I lost you there for a second.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. It's just the connections. We'll work with it. And so your queerness started coming out was it in high school, you said, or?
I would say earlier than that.
Earlier.
And it was not so much associated with my sexual identity early on. It was just more the queerness of being different, and things that I, can now pull back and identify as being part of a whole package of queerness. But for sure, by the time, adolescence hit and attractions started happening, that was when I knew for sure that, back then I would have said, oh, I struggle with same-sex attraction, or I struggle with homosexuality. I have a thorn in the flesh, just like the Apostle Paul did. So yeah.
Did your spirituality or your connection with your religion, did that start to, I guess, separate? When did that start to separate for you? Was it related to your sexuality, or was it prior to that it kind of started unraveling, I guess?
I did everything I could to maintain my spirituality and particularly my religious faith. Not even my spirituality, but the religious faith of the culture that I grew up in was of utmost importance to me in all ways. So I worked really, really hard to always put that first. And anytime I came up against a conflict with anything that was going on internally, I would choose the church, I would choose the Bible, I would choose my faith. I never, it was a long time before I ever let myself even start to question my faith. So I wouldn't even say that they came up, that there was any kind of recognized struggle internally with me until college, really. What I had done up till that point was just kind of have the person that everybody knew, Matthew, who was the good golden kid, and sang in church and was on student government and led chapels at our Christian school and just did all the good boy things that he should be doing. And then I had this very internal, private side where I would indulge my I would indulge my sexuality in private, whether that was looking up some porn or whatever. But I would always, the guilt around having that secret second life was so intense and so overwhelming. And I remember writing so many songs about repentance and the need to get right with God again because I screwed up yet again. And so I was just in this cycle of what I perceived to be sin at the time, and then needing to be redeemed, always back and forth. And it's a little exhausting to go through that daily.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think a lot of us can relate to that experience. So when you went to college, were you studying, what were you studying?
Everything. I changed my major so many times. I went to a little Presbyterian school in Tennessee. And so, still in the same kind of fundamentalist Southern Bible Belt vein, but even at a little small Presbyterian school, you're going to have a much more diverse experience than you are when you're just in your family's cultural bubble and literally don't know anyone who doesn't believe almost exactly the same way you do. So it was interesting to be in school and where I worked with the ESL department for a little while, just meeting people from around the world who did not line up with American evangelicalism at all in any way. And then just meeting people from other faith traditions, other Christian traditions, and some students who, God forbid, at our Christian school, weren't even all that Christian. They landed there for all kinds of different reasons. And so that was the first time I ever had a my eyes opened to the fact that not everyone around me who doesn't believe the same things is a terrible pagan, as I had been taught to believe, or a terrible heathen. That was the whole reason my podcast is called Heathen, is because that was just the word my mom used growing up all the time. Anything that felt outside of our religious cultural experience, oh, that's heathen. Those heathens, you know.
Right.
So I had
Yeah.
to reclaim that word a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And so you brought up I know the Heathen podcast comes a little bit further down the road.
Yeah, it does. Much later.
Yeah. So I guess so after college, what'd you do?
So college, I moved back home for a little bit, and then I moved out west. I had an opportunity to go to Reno, Nevada, and I had grown up reading all the Western stories, the whole go west, young man. Like that was a it was a whole thing. I was very excited to like go try out a different part of the country. So the biggest little city in the world, Reno, Nevada. I lived there for a couple years. I got involved in a church there, a big mega church. I was eventually brought on to staff. I was a worship leader, and then from that experience, I became part of a church planting team from that church that moved down here to San Diego, where I am today. And so that's why I'm in San Diego, was to plant a church, which I did with a group of people, and we did that for. I'm sorry.
Well, and your sexuality was still something that you weren't necessarily living into at that point, or?
Yeah, correct. During all of that time, I was very much, I like to say my coming out story is a decade long. Like there wasn't a day when I was like, I'm gay, I'm here, I'm queer, get used to it. It happened in very small incremental steps. From telling just a couple close friends at college that, again, I quote unquote, struggle with same-sex attraction, because that was the acceptable way to talk about it. I couldn't even say the words I'm gay, because that would just mean a whole bunch of things that I didn't want people to think about me. I wanted them to know that I was fighting this thing, and like I was working with the Lord to overcome, and all of that. So while I was working at the church in Reno, when they wanted to bring me on staff, that was when I was like, I gotta let some people know what's going on, because I don't want, like, my worst fear would be to be brought on staff and then for someone to find out later, and then to get fired or have some kind of public shaming, horrible moment. So I told them at the get-go, I was like, look, I struggle with homosexuality. I've done all kinds of things to try and change it. I self-enrolled in Exodus. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
It was at one point it was like, one of the largest conversion therapy organizations in the nation. It's now thankfully disbanded. But I self-enrolled in that, and I went to group meetings, and I went to the national conference, and like did all the steps, and just believed that I earnestly believed for a long time I was going to be able to change my orientation and be straight, because I earnestly believe that's what God wanted for me.
Right.
And so I put myself through a lot to try and make those things happen, and they didn't, unsurprisingly. Now, and so the next phase of my coming out was, and this was by the time I had moved to San Diego to start the church. I kind of said well, no, actually, I still was trying to live into trying to be straight for a long time.
Right.
I dated some women, really tried to make it happen. And then there was a 5-year period where I just was like, I've done everything I know to do, from going to like healing services, like Pentecostal, like, hit you on the head kind of services to like pray the gay out of you. I've done 12-step programs. I've done Exodus. I've done the group therapy. I have read everything I can get my hands on about this topic. And I finally, got to a breaking point where I was like, I can't, this is killing me. It's just exhausting. And I, it's killing my spirit and my soul. And so I'm just going to accept that for whatever reason, I am gay. And that's not a thing, apparently, that I am able to change. But I still am in that time operating out of a place of a lot of fear that I would lose my community, that I would lose my place in this thing that I was very good at. Again, very good at church. And so I chose, and I was very public with this. I was like, I'm gay and I'm choosing to be single and celibate. And I did that for 5 years. And I don't. Are you familiar with the Gay Christian Network, GCN? I think that now they're called Q Christian Network. But they were back in the day. They were called the Gay Christian Network, and they had national conferences, and it was a space where you could come as a queer Christian, and they had what they would call side A and side B. And I honestly don't remember which is which now at this point, but one of them is like people who believe that it's okay to be gay and to date and have same-sex relationships, to be trans, to be whoever you are, and live into it, and you can still be a Christian. And then the other side was people who were like, no, God has clearly said no to same-sex relationships, so you can be gay, and then you still have to navigate around that somehow. Like, you can't live into it. So I was the side that, for a long time I was like, well, no, I'll be gay, but I won't live into it.
Was there a surrender? What I guess brought you to, I don't know if surrender is the right word, but kind of what brought you to that space of being okay? Or I don't know, like letting, I don't know, because I feel like I know that you're not maybe, like, I guess, when did you have to make a choice? I guess.
I did ultimately make a choice, and it's interesting to ask if I had to. I think it did come down to, for me, again, that acknowledgement that the way of doing life was killing something in me, that was killing something in me that needed to thrive. And I didn't I did all the research around the theological arguments, and talked myself into believing that actually the Bible has been misinterpreted and the clobber passages are not actually clobbering queer people as we understand queer people today. I did all that work, and at the same time, I think when I finally decided, I just didn't care anymore. I just had lost a lot of respect over the years for both the institution of church, and even lost respect for the Bible, and at the bare minimum, at least how it had been used. But I think honestly for the Bible itself. And so I had kind of reached a point where my faith had degraded to the point where, when I finally was like, I'm suffocating and I want to be happy, I didn't really need to do a lot of personal mental gymnastics with my faith anymore, because it had just kind of like, I don't want to say completely died or shriveled up, but it was so damaged that oh, hi Anissa, hi Wendy. I'm sorry, I'm seeing these some of these comments come through now. My faith had just reached a point where it was, how I talked about it used to be just the most elevated thing in my whole life, and the thing I would always put the priority on, and just, I think over time it was so painful and it hurt so much in so many ways that I stopped giving it that power. And by the time I decided, I was 28 when I had my first boyfriend, and at that point I didn't feel like I was betraying God in any way, and I didn't feel like I was sinning or any of that. All of that guilt stuff, I think, had just turned. I had so much anger around it, to be honest. I was just so angry at all the hurt for so long that I was happy to just kind of give a big middle finger to all of it and say, nope, I'm turning around and I'm just going to live the life that I want to live now, instead of the one that I've been told to live for my whole life.
Yeah. How did you address that, or how did you cope with that anger? Or is it still there?
I was just about to say, how am I still coping with that anger?
Right.
It is still there. And I think you've probably seen some of it in the TikTok videos. It's an undercurrent, you know, I think, to all of the work I do now. I'm a very justice oriented person. Like, it pains me to see injustice in the world, and I think once I came out and started making queer friends and started finding other people, you know, a lot of people I grew up with who were queer, and, you know, we just didn't know that about each other because we were all so desperately trying to hide it. Once I saw the impact it was having on this broad group of people, and that we were a broad group of people, you know, I didn't feel so more like I was the only person in the world who, you know, was attracted to, the only boy in the world who was attracted to men. It just started to burn in me, just this like righteous anger, like, for how for all the pain that people have gone through, and all the people I met at those Exodus conferences, and the people in my group therapy sessions, and the tears we would shed in front of each other when we were trying to talk our way out of who we were.
Right.
Yeah, just it's still one of the things that drives me, my anger, and I'm not, you know, I'm definitely one of the people who believe that our emotions all exist for a reason, and I believe that we have to do well at managing our emotions. I'm not always the best. I'm not always perfect at managing my emotions, but I do try to use my anger in ways that are constructive, and you know, if anything, make sure that I'm using it to fight for justice, and to stand up for people who've been hurt. So,
and like, not to be rude to a lady, but how old are you now?
I'm 38 years old.
Okay, so you've been
38 years young. Yeah, I've been, you know, for a full decade now.
healing.
I'm married now. You know, I got married a year and a half ago, and
Congratulations.
thank you very much. You know, my name's Flamy Grant. Sometimes I like to refer to my husband as Vince Thrill, just so that we both have a fun little tongue-in-cheeky drag name.
Right.
But yeah, it's been a decade of discovering myself, like coming back to that boy, that little Matthew we were talking about, the boy who loved colors, like all these bright colors. You know, obviously I've found a way to nurture that child and bring that child to life in the person I am today. And I've just tried to pour my energy into making space for people to feel whole, feel fully accepted, you know, truly belong, not just fit in, but truly belong. And so, you know, I do that through the podcast we've already mentioned. I do that now through drag. It's interesting. My drag was very much my own little private, personal thing that I just, you know, I got hooked on Drag Race a few years ago. My husband and I were just binging the seasons, and we were joking around one night about what if we had drag names, what would our names be? And oh, look, someone just asked about that. Look, this segue. How great.
Yeah, totally worked out well.
Answer this question right now. Herding
cats.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, it's herding cats.
Herding cats. I love it. That's really cute. So obviously a lot of drag performers have punny names, tongue-in-cheeky names that are, based on, Tina Burner, is on this season of Drag Race. And I've always liked a good pun. Hi, John. Good to see you here. John is actually in a Facebook group called the Gay Friends of Amy Grant that I was recently invited to be a part of. And so I picked Flamy Grant because I didn't grow up, I was not allowed to listen to the Chers, the Madonnas, all the queer icons that people of my generation have. I didn't know who they were because pop culture was bad and I could only listen to anything we could buy at our local family Christian bookstore. So to me, Amy Grant was the epitome of stardom and she was everything. And I just adored her. And so when we were laying in bed that one night talking about our drag names, I was like, well, I'd like to have a punny, funny name, after a big diva. I was like, but my biggest diva is Amy.
Right.
The first word I could think of that rhymed with Amy was Flamy. And I was just like, the second I said it, I was like, and I didn't even tell my husband that night, but I went and I reserved all the handles, like the Instagram handle and all the things. Cause I was like, I feel like this is something. And I wasn't even really I had no plans to do drag at that point. I was just kind of obsessed with it. And then, lo and behold, here we are. Quarantine pandemic happened and I had a whole lot of extra time on my hands and I learned how to do some makeup and I learned how to do some wigs and costumes. And fortunately, I live in a house with some housemates who are musicians and my co-hosts on the podcast. And so we have been doing a Thursday night live concert on the internet every Thursday night since quarantine began. And I started coming to those shows in drag, and that was really where I learned to do all this silliness.
Nice. So you so you first got into drag for that concert, or?
Well, no, the first time in drag was Halloween.
Of course.
Every Halloween, a new drag queen is born, and I'm one of those. So I went as a witch, and I was very excited. It's like it's that Halloween's the time when it's safe to play with gender and explore some things. And so I went as a witch named Mahulda Dratch, and she's a mess. Those pictures are a delight to look back on.
Right.
But it was the Halloween before, it was 2019. So 2020 rolled around and I was stuck at home, and I had done it a couple times up to that point, just at home, just playing with makeup. And once once quarantine really hit and we were in lockdown, I was like, well, I'm going to take this opportunity and start playing around. So that's the funny thing about Flamy. It was my little safe project. I didn't want to share it with anybody. I didn't even, like I said, I didn't even tell my husband for months that I had the Instagram account, but I was posting my little looks on there. And I just never intended for, despite the fact that I chose a drag name like Flamy Grant that so clearly has ties to an evangelical upbringing, and there's so much culture around American Christianity and the little subcultures that we created in the 80s and 90s and that still happen, obviously. Even though I picked that myself, I still didn't want for Flamy to be part of the work I was doing with Heathen or just any of my spiritual deconstruction, any of that. I was like, this is just for me. I just want to have some fun, pretty makeup and just learn some new skills. So, and it was for a while. And then my friend Kate, who is the pastor of the church that I attend now, not the same church that I moved here to start. She you know, I was doing Flamy on Thursday nights on our little live show. So she had come out, like Flamy was out in the world, and I was like, okay, this is great. Like I don't know where it's going to go, but I'm going to just follow this dream, follow this thread.
Right.
And it was my friend Kate who said, you know, why don't we have Flamy come give the sermon one Sunday morning? We broadcast our church services from our basement here in this house because we were set up for it. And so I was like, I don't know what that's going to look like. Hi, Paul. I don't know what it looks like for Flamy to give a Sunday morning message. And our church is very non-traditional anyway. I mean, they call it a progressive Christian church, but at the end of the day, you don't have to believe any specific creed to just be fully embraced and be part of this family and this community, which is the reason that I'm there, because I do not have a creed in that sense. And so I was like, well, what would I talk about? What would that look like? And that is where the TikTok video that you played at the intro to this conversation, that's where that came from. It was me playing with what it would look like for a drag queen to talk about her spiritual experience.
Oh, wow.
And you know, I posted that, and then I woke up the next morning and had texts from my sister and all these other people, and they were like, so your video's kind of hopping, it's kind of going viral.
Right.
And sure enough, I looked at it the next day and couldn't believe how many people had found it and resonated with the story in it. And so part of me was like, well, damn it. I guess now this little creation that I've created for myself to make me feel safe and to explore all these parts of myself, I guess she's also meant to be part of my work of space making for people. And honestly, and you know, I say damn it, but at the end of the day, I couldn't be happier that this is somehow speaks to people and reaches people in a way that my favorite comment that people tend to leave over and over again is, I feel safe or I feel seen when I watch this video. And that just like breaks me down to my core, because if there's anything I could do with my life, it's just to make safe spaces and help people feel seen and help people feel whole and loved. Like, I love that. So the fact that
drag is such a powerful thing. It is so surprising to me how much other people are impacted by drag.
Yeah. You must know about it. I mean, like pulling all these queens together to have these kinds of conversations. I'm sure you witness it on the regular. Like it's wild. I don't think I really foresaw the overlap of the spiritual journeys that we're all on, and how it really into this, like, whether it's performance or whether it's, you know, part of an identity and how we're exploring our gender and all these things. There is so much overlap, and it's beautiful. It's fabulous.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the process that you went through, which I would say is like integrating your spirituality into your drag. Like, that's kind of what I'm hoping to do when I interview, because some of the folks that I interview, they don't identify with any spirituality. They don't have any religion. They maybe haven't had an experience, or they did. And so it's just about trying to weave it or integrate it a little bit into their narrative. So that's kind of what my hope is to create an opportunity for people to start to become more integrated and more whole, I guess, to pull that part out of the closet, if you will, and like have it meet with something else that I think is really there and had been there all along. We just hadn't like noticed it, I think.
Here. That is,
and I think it's powerful when you can claim it, when you can say, no, this is spiritual shit. Because I mean, as queer folks, we're told God hates us. We're not allowed to have spirituality. We're of the devil. We're like, whatever, these sorts of things are told to us. And so then we find other ways, I think, to get life and to get our spirit lifted. And that's the club, that's the music, that's the clothes, and that's spiritual shit. you know, but we
Absolutely.
don't call it that, but it's a big part of it.
So much. Yes. It's, yeah, like Rob Bell says, everything is spiritual. And I love that we can talk about like a euphoria, a high that we might have at the club, or even like, you know, on substances of different
totally.
types and kinds of things. And talk about the like church experiences that we had that were same difference, like same experience, like chemicals in our body reacting to sounds and sights, and the emotions that would rise up at church. Like it's so great to be able to, well, yeah, you said it best, just reclaiming all of this experience and saying, no, it's spiritual too. It matters on a spiritual level just as much as it matters, you know, as for entertainment value, and for, which is not, that's not nothing. Like entertainment is important and great and wonderful, but also don't sleep on the fact that you know, this wig can also help me have some kind of euphoric spiritual experience as well.
What has been most helpful to you through this process? Like, where do you get your support? Or is it all you, girl?
No, I'm not an island. No, I'm just trying to sort the list, I guess, in my head. Because, you know, I've mentioned my housemates who are my podcast co-hosts, and now, you know, my musician friends, now that we've been in quarantine. That's for sure just my small little community of people who help me put on the podcast, who do the Thursday night shows with us, which they're like cover concerts. Like we pick a theme, and then we pick a bunch of songs that fit in the theme, and we sing them and then talk. But even that becomes its own very spiritual experience, because we'll have wild conversations on Thursday nights with the people in the comments, just kind of like what we're doing right now. Some of the people, Wendy and Paul, some of the people in the room, Anissa and Vicky, they all come to that as well. So they know what I'm talking about. But so yeah, just the people in my close little vicinity are a huge help to me. Just, I mean, just as a human, but then also spiritually. My family, my siblings in particular, are everything to me. I don't have the best relationship with all of my family members, so the ones that I feel connected with, and who do, you know, embrace me and accept me fully as I am, like those relationships just matter so much to me. You know, it's our chosen family, and then the family that we grew up with, that we're able to like have on our side. Those things matter.
Has there anything that Flamy has brought out of you? Like, have you noticed how I guess your non-Flamy self has Flamy impacted him? You're impacted. I'm sorry. Do you have your pronouns? I didn't even ask. Outside of drag.
I forgot to ask you your pronouns as well. I'm he, him, or she, her, either side.
So I guess how has Flamy affected your him?
Yeah, in huge ways. You know, I like I said, I started this as this very private little experience, and it was fascinating how quickly I started wearing makeup to work. Not this, not, you know, what we're looking at today, but just, you know, a little eyeshadow, a little liner, some lip color every now and then, and so that was a direct result of playing with drag and realizing that I like this more than just for its ability to entertain or to take a pretty picture for my drag account. Like there's that the instincts that young Matthew had playing in his mom's makeup, like those things are still in me, and we're awakening again after 30 years of being dormant and corked and bottled up. So, I mean, it's a, sorry.
No, I was gonna say I identify as polygender, right? Did that come before Flamy, or did you
No.
learn that through Flamy?
That's actually really recent that I've finally kind of found that word and feel like it fits my experience. So Flamy, I would say, is the only reason I have started to explore my own gender identity.
Mm.
You know, we talked about coming out, but for me, that was very much my sexual identity, like identifying as gay. Like that took me a really long time just to get my head around that. And now here I am, you know, 38, and I'm like, oh, like I may not simply be like boy, male, like that.
Right.
There may be more to me
Mm-hmm.
um, than just that one gender expression that was the one I had to live into growing up, or I would have been, you know, punished, exiled, all kinds of things. So now that I'm at a place where I have the freedom and, you know, suddenly the ability to explore it in new ways because of Flamy, it's like
Mm-hmm.
opened the floodgates, and I'm just like, yeah, I've past few months I've been on just a little rampage of absorbing anything I can learn about
Mm.
gender, and I love that term polygender just for the simple fact that I can just, you know, if somebody asks about me, I can just say I'm a lot. I'm
Right.
just a lot. Multiple, you know, poly just means many. It just means multiple, and that was a thing about me that was always hard for my community to swallow, was that I'm a lot,
Mm.
right? Like
Right.
um, I think a lot of people are told you're or the fear that they grow up with is I'm not enough, and
Right.
mine was the opposite. It was I'm too much and people can't
Mm.
handle me, and I just better tone it all down and turn it down so that I will fit in and not
Yeah.
scare people away and not be, you know, just if I want to have friends, I got to tone it down, and if I want to get into heaven, I got to tone it down, and all those things. So it's been wonderful to just like throw on some glitter and then be like, you know what, not enough, it's not enough glitter, I need more, like, and
Right.
just go as big as my spirit, you know, has always wanted to, with all of these the ways to express myself
Mm-hmm.
in all these genders, and I just love it. Yeah, I'm a lot and I love it.
Right. It's a gift. It's a beautiful thing, and it's like it's a gift from God. Like it's, I don't know. For me, my drag and my transness, I came to hold and awaken via drag as well. So I totally understand that, like that relationship. And it's like, oh my gosh, this thing has been there the whole time, and I was just too scared, and I wasn't in an environment that allowed me to really like touch that part of me. And so it's been great to kind of find myself in a place in which I can touch those parts of myself. And for me, my like seeking God or seeking some sort of the divine, like I feel like it's the divine in me. Like my drag is an expression of the divine within me. Like it's totally spiritual. That's it. It's just all spiritual. But
I love it. I love it so much. Was it a much later in life experience for you too, discovering that about yourself?
yeah, I just started doing drag about 3 years ago. So it's fairly new. I even actually started interviewing drag artists about their spirituality before I started doing drag. But
Wow.
I had done drag when I was like 20, and I had a really hard time with it because I just was starting to identify as a gay male at that time and coming out. And then I was getting hit on by guys as a guy, but then getting hit on by those same guys as a drag queen. And I couldn't do those things at once because I was like, I'm a dude who likes dudes. I'm not a dude who wants to be a girl or whatever. And so for me, that was my own internalized transphobia that was going on. And at that point in my life, I just couldn't be with it. So I had to kind of just get away from it for a while. And I did for almost 20 years. So
I I completely understand. Absolutely. I mean, you know, to my own shame, I used to be the gay guy who would look at the acronym and say, I don't know why the T is in is with all of the rest of the letter. That's not me. That's not my experience. Like you know, I like what you just said. I'm a dude who wants to be masculine.
Right,
Masculine. It's really
Masculine
funny
is
to
heck, right?
It's really funny to say when I'm seeing my reflection right now. And I just don't understand what that's all about. And I was internalized homophobia coming out in waves. And I hate that, you know, I was trained to be part of the oppressor, right? Like I was brought up and all of that instilled in me from the youngest of ages to make it harder for the next person to come out, to be themselves, to be whole. And so that's, I mean, that is everything. If I can spend the rest of my life, you know, both trying to undo some of the things I said and have done and believed in the past, but also just like, just going bananas for inclusivity, like that would be a second half of my life well lived, and I will be thrilled.
Right. Well, and you're doing it, and like I think that the cool thing is you're having an impact on the young people. So maybe they don't have to go through what we went through. Because could you imagine if we would have like started this earlier on in life? Look out, world, right?
I've said this so many times. I'm like, I could have like been the young drag queen doing splits and, you know, like death drops, and I could have done all this shit, but now I'm just like my knee hurts and I'm not
Right.
stand me up in the corner and let me sing, and that will be the extent of what I do for you. But yeah, it's that I think that's another piece of the anger, honestly, for me, is all that was stolen from us, the years that were stolen and not wasted, but you know, we could have had a very different experience had we been in places that the kind of places that we're going to be creating now, right? Like that's what we're going to right those wrongs for as many people as we can in the world. So I love that a 60-second TikTok video from Flamy can do that for somebody. Like I will, yeah, absolutely.
And like you said, it's so surprising because when I first started doing this too, I was like, nobody's doing this, nobody's talking about this. And then like the more I'm out there, I'm like, oh no, there's Miss Pentecost, there's Flamy Grant, there's, you know, like there's so much going on, which is awesome. See, because you know, we can feel like we're just so alone, or we're such mavericks, maybe even.
Yeah.
But it's nice to know that we're like, there's so many of us that are in this together.
Yes. It's like how the whole word deconstruction has like become this buzzword in the past year. I'm just like, when I started deconstructing, we didn't know, we weren't going to call it deconstruction. We didn't know what that was. Like,
right.
I was an apostate. That was what I was. I was like leaving the faith. And hi, Bridget. That's my coworker.
Nice.
And yeah, I love that there's so many people who are here doing the work, making the space for people and sharing their stories, because that's what we weren't allowed to do for so long. We just weren't allowed to have a story.
Right. Herdine Katz for you says, let your resentments fuel your art. Right?
Amen.
It's a good way to channel it. So
yeah, absolutely.
We're coming up right at like the last, we're actually right at an hour. So is there anything that you would like, where do you see Flamy? What's next for Flamy, and how can folks get connected with you?
Awesome. Well, I hope that what will be next for Flamy will be, oh, thank you, Jimmy. That's beautiful. Says we're both doing amazing work, not just for those of us who have similar stories, but to the rest of the world, to share in your journey and understand different paths in spirituality. That's what it's all about.
That's right.
What I hope is next for Flamy is some actual live in-person performances. Like, I haven't been able to do that as Flamy yet, because like as I said, this is a thing I discovered during quarantine and really put together during this past year of pandemic. So as things are, you know, finally reopening, I've had a couple conversations with a couple queens here in San Diego about some opportunities. So I really hope that soon I will, you know, be able to sing a Amy Grant cover on stage in front of actual humans.
Yes. I want a ticket.
Absolutely.
I'll have to come down to Southern California and check it out.
Yes. And vice versa. I have friends in the Bay Area too. So let's hang out. Let's be real life friends. I love it.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. So that would be lovely. And other than that, yeah, I'm just going to keep, we have the podcast. I have my little social media accounts. I'm going to keep plugging away and exploring who this Flamy side of me is and sharing that with people, because it's just been a great way to connect with folks. So I'm at Flamy, just at Flamy Grand at all the places. TikTok is where I'm probably the most active, and Instagram. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook, but I just don't do those two as much.
And where can folks hear your podcast?
Yeah, the podcast is at heathenpodcast.com. And we're currently in our 5th season. We've got over 60 interviews that we've done since 2017 with people specifically about their stories of deconstruction or of leaving their faith of some sort, and then what they found on the other side, whether that was reconstruction or just something else entirely. And we just talk across the spectrum, talk to scientists, talk to atheists, talk to people who are still church leaders, and just anybody who will come on a show called Heathen.
Right.
It's hard to let people get past that. But
yeah, it's so. I realized that too when I called myself a queer chaplain. It's like queer is kind of a bad word for some people, but yeah, I guess that's not my audience.
I totally hear you. Yeah, it's there are a lot. I think older generations, especially, queer was used to be very harmful to them, and whereas younger generations have really done the reclaiming thing with that word and said, yeah, you know what, we are queer, we are different from you, and that's not bad. So we're going to just take that term. Great. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Yeah, it's amazing actually that we're queer. So I guess we do have to say goodbye because we are at over an hour, but I really appreciate, I know, right? I really appreciate you joining us. And thanks for everyone who joined us tonight. Thanks for the love as well, April. We love you too. This will live. So you can watch this. If you're just getting here, I know some folks just arrived. If you want to watch from the beginning, you can find it on Facebook, YouTube, and or Twitch at A Queer Chaplain, also on Flamy Grant's socials. And then you can also listen to it on a podcast, probably by tomorrow at A Queer Chaplain. I don't do a lot of editing yet because she's just a one-girl show. So everything's raw and unedited, but it's there. So check it out. I really appreciate everyone who tonight, and I wanted to join on. I think I'm starting to
I'm sorry, Bonnie. I don't know if you can hear me. I've lost you. I've lost your audio and your video. If you can still hear me, I just want to say thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. I loved every minute of it.